Sideshow presents Get Super with Joshy G. Featuring today's special guest, Luke Wessman. It's time to get super.
Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Joshy G, and welcome to another episode of Get Super with Joshy G. And this episode, I'm very excited about because I have the man, the gentleman of gentlemen, Mr. PMA himself. I have Luke Wessman joining us. Luke, how are you doing, my friend? Thank you so much for being a part of Get Super with Joshy G.
Hey man, I'm doing great. Thanks for the great intro. Happy to be here.
Well, a great intro to a great tattoo artist. I'm a big Luke Wessman fan. I am blessed to have a Luke Wessman tattoo. And for those of you that don't know who Luke Wessman is, we're going to get to that in a little bit. But first and foremost, Luke, how are you doing? I know we kind of see it a lot at the end of the tunnel. Things are starting to get back to normal. Hopefully things are getting back to normal in your shop. But how are you doing? You staying healthy? You staying safe? All that good stuff?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. You know, I've always kind of had that can-do attitude. So during the beginning of the quarantine, I got nervous and kind of like, you know, they shut down all the tattoo shops and everything like that. But I have a private studio, so it was kind of like my own rules. I didn't have to follow the rules of Newsom or anybody, you know, in the state. I kind of just did my own thing, which is why I got into tattooing in a sense. And I got a little nervous though when I didn't want to be that close to people. You know, you're within inches sometimes or a foot or two of someone's face. As trained as I am with, you know, bloodborne pathogens and stuff like that, it was still kind of like a little nerve-wracking. So I took a step back and I figured out other ways to make some money and just ended up having a great year, you know, hunkered down and just hustled and stayed positive. And I'm happy to see the light at the end of the tunnel though.
Yeah, again, if you don't know, Luke is a tremendous artist, which we'll get to in a moment. But some of those things that he was able to kind of pivot during the quarantine situation was you were able to make puzzles. Puzzles were in such demand, and you were really cool in coming up with a couple of puzzle ways with some original art. How did that kind of come about? Was that your idea, or did somebody say, "Hey, maybe you should try this"?
So I've always liked puzzles. Don't really do a lot of them in this day and age, but then obviously with the pandemic, it was kind of like one of those things that made itself like more prevalent, like, oh, a puzzle would be cool, you know? So I started doing some puzzles with my lady's family, and we had a running puzzles going at the house. And she has a pretty big family, and we kind of had a big bubble quarantine going. And so we kind of just chip away at puzzles together. And I just was like, why don't I put my art on a puzzle? This is a no-brainer. Doing pictures of random scenes in France or the Eiffel Tower, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I could do some cool Luke Wessman art. So the goal was to get it out by Christmas. And so I had a friend help me design the box and set one up. And I was like, I got it made in China, which wasn't my, I didn't want to, but if you're a small business, that's a whole nother story. But like, it's the difference of making a puzzle for like $80 each or 10, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as a small business, I made it in China. So anyway, it took about 3 months to get here. And I didn't think I was going to make it in time for Christmas. And I just was like, okay, well, at least I'll have a cool project. And it made it like 2 weeks before Christmas. And I was like, okay, if I sell 50 of them, I'll make my money back. It'll be awesome. It's the first time I ever made a puzzle. And within, I don't know, a few days, timing was just perfect and sold out for Christmas. So now I'm in the puzzle business. Now I'm working on more puzzles.
From tattoo artists to puzzles. I love it. Yeah. What a great transition. Now, for those of you that don't know, Luke is, again, I've already said this before, an amazing artist, tattoo artist in the California area. He has tattooed numerous celebrities, amongst others, me included, a pseudo celebrity, but big time celebrities in himself. But how does one? I know, like you probably get this question. How does one get into to tattooing? But before we get into that, what was life like growing up for a young Luke Wessman? I'm assuming you didn't grow up, or you weren't born in California, correct?
Right. So I was born. It's a long, interesting story, and I don't know that we can get into everything because it's so full. But I was born on a hippie farm in Tennessee.
See, great start already. Great start already.
It was a place where my parents who left, they were both in the army. It was around the 70s and they left. They didn't want to conform and they were kind of getting into that hippie movement that was happening in the 70s. And they heard of this place in Tennessee called The Farm where it was like organic living, natural, all kinds of like very hip stuff now. But at the time, was kind of like emerging as like the freedom way to live.
So growing your
So,
own food, making your own
yes,
clothes,
yeah.
bartering, trading, that type of stuff, right?
Yeah, like growing your own food, natural energy, just all that stuff. But anyway, I didn't get to partake in any of that. I was just born there. And then my parents hitchhiked with me and my older brother on their backs to California and kind of just hitchhiked up and down the California coast. And, you know, uh, without getting too crazy deep into it all, but it was full of tents and camping in vans and soup kitchens and a really full interesting ride, um, and a lot of fun. I didn't know any better, so I was just on this adventure with my folks.
Well, I mean,
So
again, too, like if you were to say like that now, people would maybe kind of look down upon that, or like, oh, you can't hitchhike with a young kid or two young kids at that, in this day and age. But back then, everything was a little bit more freer, a little bit more like free spirited, so to speak. So in a way, you could kind of get away with that. But as a young kid, you couldn't tell the difference in the sense of
yeah.
like, oh, this is not a great idea. Or maybe like, this isn't how my friends get around. And here I am moving from not only city to city, but state to state hitchhiking. Were you able to know what was going on? Or were you just, as a young child, having a blast?
I think, I mean, because of the situation, I was an extra humble and quiet kid. I was just kind of along for the ride and taking everything in and trying not to be a burden for my parents. Um, so I think that kind of instilled in me a lot of kind of humility and like just I don't know, a quietness that I had for most of my childhood. But I took it all in, and I don't remember. There was no one to compare. The way we were living, there was nobody across the street that had cooler toys, or you know what I mean. Like I didn't have that comparison to realize I didn't have it a certain way. So yeah, I had a great time in a sense. For a lot of that young time that could be seen as kind of like crazy. It was a lot of nature, a lot of ocean, a lot of mountains. I think it just really tuned my connection to the world and earth and spirituality or whatever in a different way.
Now, when did you start drawing or creating art? Was it at a young age, or was it while you were on the road?
I think that was pushed by my folks. I mean, they were very creative, crafty people. My mom would always sew and, you know, sew her own clothes and just was a very crafty lady. And then my dad was kind of a musician, or is a musician. And I just kind of took that creative energy and was always kind of pushed into crafts, whether it be drawing or coloring or building stuff. So I think that creative mindset was the biggest gift I got back then, and something that I just happened to channel into tattooing. It could have been any other type of art form. It just happened to be the pathway took me to tattoo as the medium.
Now, when did you decide that tattooing was going to be your source of income, in the sense that it was did you get your tattoo first, or did you happen to stumble upon tattooing and be like, oh, this is what I want to do? Because a lot of people that I've come across when it comes to tattooing and or getting tattooed is they're always very apprehensive, right? They're always like, oh, I don't know if I can get this tattoo, or they overthink their very first tattoo. And then once you get one, it's just like Lay's potato chips. Once you have one, you got to keep going. You can't stop. Did you get tattooed first, or did you decide you wanted to be a tattoo artist first?
Okay, so for me, I got tattooed first. I was right about 15, 16, and my older brother's friend was tattooing everybody in the neighborhood. And his name was Jason Betts. He's still tattooing to this day in San Diego County. Um, he did my first one. And
At 15 or 16?
yeah, I probably was, yeah. And me and my best friend got him at his apartment. And in his apartment was amazing. Talking about collectibles. His whole room was full of bicycles and wetsuits and fishing poles and radios and car stereos. They were all exchange for tattoos from the neighborhood. So you went into his apartment, and you're like, holy crap, this is like a pawn shop. And that was my first like kind of experience with like tattooing. It was just him. Aside from just seeing like the gangsters and the thugs in the neighborhood with tattoos, this was my first experience like getting a tattoo and being like that close to it. And for me, it was like I want to get as mean looking as I can because I'm around a lot of thugs, and I'm a nice guy. I'm a sweet, kind soul, and I have to build this armor. So my goal started then to like look tough. And I think I was getting them like every other week. I started adding little tattoos, and the first 10 are like kind of meaningful. You got to get the family or the religion or the neighborhood and stuff that, you have to be able to answer. If someone asks you, why do you have that? You have to have a good answer, like in your mind. That's like kind of the mindset. So I had to get that out of the way. And then you get to the fun. Then you get to like the art collecting and the styles that you like and the artists. But at the time it was black and gray, try to look tough, get what some of the cholos had in the neighborhood, last name across the back and the Virgin Marys and the religious tats. And that just kind of got me in the door. And then I started seeing that there was this whole world there, and art form and different style of artists. And I mean, there was no internet at the time to look up stuff. So it was really like I stumbled upon it with this, this childhood friend of my older brother's. And then he started working at a shop. And then I started seeing other artists and other artwork, and started collecting other types. And then within a couple years, I became friends with a guy who was a tattooer at the shop that my older brother's friend started working at. And he randomly said, hey, do you want to learn how to tattoo? And it just blew my mind because it didn't even know it was an option. I didn't even know it was an option. I was just getting tattooed. I was creative. I was an artist. But to be a tattooer as a profession, like I just didn't even know that I could do that. I was an electrician. I was a young electrician working with some friends in a small company and loving it, but I could have tattoos. I could make a little bit of money. And so my path is so long. I don't know how much you want me to keep going, but.
Oh, no. I mean, first of all, I love all this stuff. I geek out on this stuff. I mean, obviously I geek out on a lot of things, but as you know now, like people get tattoos on a whim, and I'm trying to think like, whoa, wow, if I was 15 or 16 years old, I would be getting pop culture things that I loved. It would be a wrestling tattoo or it would be a comic book tattoo, Luckily, I waited a little bit longer, but I mean, it's just so funny why people get, what you were describing, why they choose to get their first tattoo. Is it because they want to represent their name or their family or have something meaningful, or they just want to get something out of the way? And in your case, you kind of used it as a shield, as a protector, because you wanted these people not only to just kind of accept you in a way, but also you wanted to be able to say, hey, look, this is my suit of armor. I'm a tough guy.
Yeah.
Like, don't mess with me, because you didn't want to get bullied. And I totally understand that.
Yeah, it was just, it was it, man. It was the porcupine, you wanted to like kind of like keep them at bay and look mean, so people didn't want to mess with you. And not that I couldn't handle my own, because that was all part of it, I could, but I just didn't have that energy or that mindset to get in a lot of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We ended up doing it, me and my brother who owns Violent Gentlemen. We used to go to a lot of punk shows and scrap with the skinheads and just get into a lot of stuff in that regard. But I just never it's not my energy, but I always wanted to make sure I could handle it if it came. So, I mean, aside from looking tough, we definitely trained and did a lot of boxing then and a little bit of jiu-jitsu way back in the day. And we did everything we could to actually be tough, but also look tough.
Yeah, you got to be, you have to be able to protect yourself, especially in those situations. At that time, you weren't Luke Wessman who you are now. You weren't, living in the greatest of neighborhood, and you did not want to be intimidated. Therefore, you also didn't want to be punked out, so to speak, by a bunch of bullies. And I think that speaks volumes even to now. Like, there are kids that, change the way they look, or they decide to go get tattoos because they don't want, in a way, to be bullied about, the way they look. Same thing with like working out. There's so many people, wrestlers, actors, stuntmen we've had on the show that have said the exact same thing. Like, hey, I went to the gym because I was tired of people picking on me. You can even go so far as, like the old Captain America route, right? Like he did not like bullies, therefore, when he was able to have these special powers, he wasn't going to allow that to change who he was on the inside. He's still who he was on the inside. He just wouldn't allow himself to be bullied around. Now you start tattooing. You kind of get a taste of what it's like. Were there any artists, whether it be actual comic book artists or tattoo artists or artists in general, that inspired you? Did you look at certain things and go, oh, I like that style, I'm going to start to emulate my career around this particular style?
So the path that I found, and tattooing it's such a broad spectrum. Every artist kind of comes into it differently and gets influenced a little bit differently. I got really influenced by the guy that helped me, that brought me in, and he was like a traditional tattoo artist. So it was like kind of the bold lines, the more sailor style tattoo, the Sailor Jerry. So I directly, as a young tattooer, got influenced by that and really just immersed myself in the old school stuff. Just because of the pathway, and luckily, I think it is a great foundation for the art, whether you veer off and change a little bit more different ways. So I was really inspired by the kind of the jailhouse tattoos, just because of that energy that I came from, and the respecting the street and, street gangs. And I just loved that stuff in a way. I love the strength of it and the community of it. And so I love that artwork, but then I got into it as a traditional tattooer. And so the artists that I looked up to at the time were just old school traditional tattooers that were well known in like the tattoo community for that genre, like for traditional Scott Sylvia and Dave Gibson and Sailor Jerry and Ed Hardy, and like these really kind of prominent figures in that style of art. So I just kind of studied them. Any book that was around that I could find that had their work in it, that was all we could do back then. We couldn't Google it, or watch. There wasn't really much documentaries or anything on it, but it was all books, So books were everything in my early years. Books and some magazine coverage of different artists, But traditional tattooing, became my foundation and became my passion for many years. And then that took me to we could keep going on my journey. We're owning my own shop, working on the street, tattooing tons of military and Navy, and then going all the way to Miami and working at Miami Inc., and that whole side of my story and that whole part of my path, worked there for like 5 years. And then you learned how, I was tattooing with a lot of guys that did Japanese work, like Chris Garver and Ami James and these guys. And so I was influenced by them. And, as a traveling tattooer, I really started traveling after Miami, and you kind of take on and you pull little pieces, and take influence from a lot of different artists, or at least I did. And so, although my foundation was traditional, it really became broadened by working and traveling and working with these other great artists that did other styles.
So was it, when you started traveling and working in Miami, was that when you started getting more mainstream notoriety?
Well, I think it was a conscious decision. There was this battle there with the first 10 years of my tattooing, maybe 5, where you just really want to honor the craft. You kind of get instilled in you that this is an old profession and it's special and it's hard earned, and then you appreciate it and protect it. So I was really kind of grew up in that culture. And then I started working at the Miami Ink, and that was like the opposite, where it was like our profession was on TV for the first time. And it was being shown to the masses, and it was letting out maybe a magic or a secret that shouldn't have been just showed to the world. And so I was battling with that perception from my peers that weren't involved. And then fighting the fact that I was able to benefit from this and have, being able to work at the busiest shop in the world, and some of the most the notoriety that came along with that. So I wasn't one of the main characters on the show, but I was still there, and it was a nice place for me to be, because I wasn't like in my mind a full sellout. You know what I mean? I'm not dancing around on the show, but I'm there. It's busy. I get to do a lot of work. I'm putting in the work. And I'm benefiting from the notoriety of the shop as a whole. So at that time, I kind of started to see it like, okay, well, I can't make my reputation through theirs if I don't start working on my own personal reputation. And that meant for me kind of finding out who I was, what my voice was. And that's kind of along the lines when I started doing like this self-made thing. and I started making some self-made gear and just running with it. I used to be embarrassed that I was born on a hippie farm, right? Because it was like not normal. It wasn't the local hospital where all my buddies were born. It was a weird hippie farm thing, and then a whole part of the story that I skipped over is my parents kind of took off when I was like about 15 or 16. So there was nobody to tell me not to get tattooed.
But that's the thing. You just mentioned you kind of promote this self-made kind of mantra, right? You tell people, hey, I'm self-made, so can you. This is where the PMA, at least that's where I think the PMA comes from, positive mental attitude. And it's such a great story in the sense that, like, yeah, I could see where your peers would be like, oh, Luke Wessman sold out. Oh, he's no longer sticking to his roots. But did you really sell out? You started, like you said, on a commune, on this hippie farm. Your family, they didn't drive. They didn't fly. They didn't even take a train. They hitchhiked across the country with you and your brother in tow. You grew up in San Diego. You got beat up. You had to toughen up. You cut your teeth. You paid your dues in a tattoo shop. You now are on a TV show in Miami. You are starting to become a little bit more successful. So in my point of view, and again, I'm not a tattoo artist, I could see where people would say you quote unquote sold out, but you're making it. You are adapting to the brand new environment that is the, I would assume the mid 2000s, which everything was on reality TV. You had the Osbournes taking things over. You had everything from Hogan Knows Best. There was Monster Garage. I mean, any type of profession had a reality show, and tattoo was no exception. And so, again, you could be a boring personality and tattoo people, and you also don't have to be this person that's going over the top, but people were drawn, so to speak, to your personality and your way of thinking and your self-made attitude. And I think that that's what sets you apart from all these other tattoo artists. I'm not saying that you're better and or worse, but again, that attitude, that being able to tell people, hey, look, if I can make it, so can you, as long as you have this positive mental attitude, as long as you have this self-made attitude. And so in a way, to me, that's not you selling out. That's just you practicing what you preach.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, man. I kind of, it's still to this day, it's weird to tell my story, you know what I mean? Which is, everyone has one. And so mine doesn't seem that unique or special, but yeah, I mean, I definitely own that moniker for me, self-made, from actually zero, from nothing to where I am now, which is, it's still another plateau, and, I still have hopes to kind of keep soaring or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the self-made thing is, it's there. I tattooed on my knuckles when I was, I don't know, 20, and it was like a turning point. It's like, okay, now I'm making it. I owned a tattoo shop. I fell into owning a shop in my 20s, and that's a whole nother chapter of the story that we, can be very long. So we'll skip over that for now.
Well, I'm just saying, there's no, in my opinion, and maybe it's because I'm a mark for Luke Wessman or tattoos or just people with really cool stories, but there is no difference from Luke Wessman tattooing self-made on his knuckles to Jim Carrey writing himself a check for whatever it was, $10 million, and him being able to cash it, 30 years later or whatever the case may be. I mean, again, it's just a reminder of where you come from and possibly where you are going. Now, and again, nothing about this story to me is boring, and I would assume that the folks at home are finding this interesting as well. But you start to get some fame and notoriety. You start tattooing celebrities, everybody from pro wrestlers to Oscar winners to sports, figures. What is that like for someone who grew up on a farm that probably didn't really pay attention to pop culture because, you didn't have a TV, maybe comic books or magazines or television wasn't, readily available to you? Did you just see these as regular customers, or were you kind of like, oh, this is kind of cool? I got, these big names and these big, these big time avenues kind of coming towards me, asking me for my opinion and looking for my art to be permanently on them for the rest of their life. Like, that has to be kind of cool, right?
Yeah, man, it's so cool. It's cool, but I've always kept my cool because I have just treated them like normal people. You know what I mean? If they're a dick, I don't want to work on them.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm gonna be a little more patient if if they're a name, you kind of try to bear with them a little bit more because you realize they have a different kind of mindset and lifestyle. But I do get bummed when a celebrity is too cool or too unaware or doesn't respect tattooing enough to kind of be patient with it. A lot of times a celebrity, their time is everything. and they'll run you through the woods, just not worrying about your time. And fortunately, I've just had this wonderful career where I've attracted good people. And then once they've came into my like fold, they've kind of like stayed as either customers or friends. A funny story with the popular DJ guys, the Chainsmokers. A friend of mine hooked me up with them to tattoo them, and the guy Alex, he was supposed to get an appointment with me, and he flaked on me like 2 or 3 times. And I remember going like, okay, that's it, twice, you're done. Like fuck, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like I don't care who you are. Not because I think I'm super cool, but because I like hated the fact of being disrespected like that. I get it. You're busy and important, and like I'll give you one, and then I'll give you another one. I'll turn the other cheek. And then the third time, I remember thinking like, I'm just gonna tell this guy off, man. He's wasting my time. And then I just swallowed my pride that time and ended up tattooing him the next time. And it was the first time I met him, Alex, and he was just awesome. Him and I just hit it off. He was really easy to tattoo. He was very open to whatever I wanted to do. He wanted to add to some stuff, and then has become a friend and a good client since. And it was another just reassurance of like, just be humble and be cool, man, because you know what? Everyone's doing their thing, and I'm not that cool. And so anyway, the way I've interacted with anybody, celebrity or janitor, has just been, trying to treat them the same. And I don't get all gaga and crazy over a celebrity, but I do know and respect what they've accomplished and where they're at, and try to treat them in kind, but I try to treat them the same way I would anybody. And I hope and I think that they see that and feel that, you know what I mean? I think it's the energy that I give them that keeps them coming back, and the work and the art, but I think the tattoo art is only part of it. And the other part is just the energy and the connection. And the experience, you can have a great artist, but he can just have like such shit energy, and you know what I mean? Like you don't want to go back. And so I've been very fortunate and crossing paths with a lot of, as far as the celebrity side goes, a lot of good people, and have made some really good friends, and it's just been wonderful. As a kind of a mellow guy, I'm a pretty introverted in some respects, until I need to not be. And to have these one-on-ones with these like actors and athletes, and just, these special moments where they're vulnerable and they're sitting with me for hours. It's unlike anything else, and it's unlike any other connection. And I've been pretty fortunate.
Now, you were talking about art. Obviously, we love nerdy stuff here at Sideshow Collectibles. Everything from, Superman to Baby Yoda, i.e. the child, Spider-Man. I mean, the list goes on and on. What would you say has been your favorite nerdy tattoo that you've given to somebody? Or have you given a nerdy tattoo to somebody? And when I say nerdy, I just mean more pop culture.
Shoot. Okay. Can I tell the story without making someone sound weird? Okay. I was tattooing. This is just somewhere connected to pop culture, and it's an interesting story. I mean, it's the one that comes to mind. It's a little weird, but it involves a popular culture thing. So I'm in New York. I'm tattooing at New York Inc. And we just have tons of clients all the time. And this one guy came in, and we have a floor guy that kind of buffers and kind of talks to them first. And then when they really are sure they want to get tattooed, then the floor guy tells us, and we draw it up. And then it's like this whole thing. So he wants a star on his butt. And I go, okay, no problem, man. And my floor guy's like, he's a little strange or whatever. It's his first tattoo. And I'm like, no problem. I'm like, I'll just make him feel comfortable and we'll get through it. So I do the star on this guy's butt, and really strange guy, wearing a G-string, whatever. Nothing, there's anything wrong with that.
No judgment. I got it.
His energy was weird, and he got a star on his butt for his first tattoo, whatever. Did the tattoo, no problem. But could feel this like draining energy of the guy. And I'm just trying to be cool and do his first tack, keep him calm. And then he goes over to the mirror and checks it out, and he's like, cool. And he comes back in this really awkward way, and he's like, did the guys tell you what else I wanted to get? And I said, what'd you want, man? What else do you want? And he's like, I want a Pokemon. He's like pointing to like right above his junk. And I was like, all right, man, let me go talk to the guys, and that's how I was like kind of exhausted with dealing with him. I don't know if it makes any sense. I mean, I'm very sensitive to people's energies, and he was a tiring guy, and I gave him the whole song and dance, and I thought I was done with him. And then he wants this Pokemon on his like pelvic bone, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I go talk to the floor guy. I'm like, man, what does he want, man? He wants a Pokemon. He wants the Pikachu. And I'm like, okay, cool. Hope he charges him a lot, because the floor guy does the pricing for the shop. And we charge a lot. We were in Soho, in a high profile shop.
Uh-huh.
And he tells me the price. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll deal with it. It was a good amount. And so I go back and I tattooed the guy, and it's just as low as he can get it, right? So and the guy's not groomed well, and it's this whole creepy thing, and whatever, you know what I mean? So I kind of fight through the tat, and I get done, and the guy's just like, I go check it out, man. I'm like, yeah, I made it. I did it really fast, but it looked good. It was clean. And he's like, okay, thank you. Yeah, it's great. And I was like, all right, man, I'm cleaning up, put a little bandage on you. You're all set. And so he's standing there, and he kind of just flashes me, and I'm like, bro, you don't got to do that, man. Let me just wrap you up and get you out of here, okay? Meanwhile, the guys are just laughing because they know it was weird. And anyway, so that was my Pokemon tattoo story. I got the guy out of there. Even though he made me very uncomfortable, I made him feel as comfortable as possible. And that was the Pokemon.
See, and this entire time, I thought that me asking my tattoo artist, Jim Sylvia, about the Skeletor tattoo was the weirdest thing. I was like, hey, man, do you know who Skeletor is? I'm a big Skeletor fan. But now I know that the Pokemon guy was clearly way more creepier than I was. When I was like, hey, can I get Skeletor tattooed on my arm with the Cobra Commander Cobra? See,
Jim's
guys,
great, by the way.
Okay.
Jim's awesome.
Yeah, Jim's great. But again, it's just so fun to me thinking how far kind of tattoos have kind of become. And when you go to these specific comic book conventions, obviously not necessarily now, but back then and hopefully soon, you see guys that not only are tattooed with their favorite scene from Star Wars or a Death Star or a Vader, but actually tattoo artists are being accepted at these conventions. Like, I'll turn the corner and I'm like looking for some statue or some collectible, and I'll see 4 or 5 tattoo artists at Comic-Con or at some sort of pop culture convention, and they're tattooing people, and I'm like, whoa, like, you can't imagine maybe at least 10 years ago maybe it was a thing and I just didn't realize it, but I just feel like it's so accepted now. And that when people go into a tattoo shop, obviously they're looking for traditional tattoos, or maybe not so much tribal tattoos anymore, but traditional tattoos. And a part of that traditional tattoo, keeping it with the Ed Hardys and the Sailor Jerrys and all that stuff, they're adding their own mix to it, like an Iron Man tattoo, but a traditional Iron Man tattoo. And those to me are the most fun because they're mixing almost two worlds, or at least in my opinion, two worlds that I love, which is really cool, clean tattooing and pop culture. You're getting the Infinity Gauntlet, but you're getting some cool ribbon and some traditional roses with it.
I just did a Deadpool that said maximum effort, and that was a great one. I did it kind of traditional, but it's so fun to do. I mean, obviously such a great character.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think it's fun too when you find somebody like yourself or like a Jim Sylvia or like whoever that can mix those two genres together. I mean, I'm such a huge fan. I love professional wrestling. I love comic books. I love pop culture. And I also love fitness, which we'll get into in a minute. And I'm able to, intertwine those three loves. And I find it so cool when we're, in the tattoo shop and I'm looking through people's books and I'm like, oh, look how cool this Darth Vader is, but done traditionally, So I think that that's fun too when people come up to you and ask for that. Yes, the Pokemon guy could have been a little off his rocker, but that's what he liked. That's great. Same thing with the Deadpool stuff. So that's cool that you're able to accommodate that, where maybe some old school traditional tattoo artists may look down upon that or poo-poo on it. You make it your own, which is really cool,
Yeah, and that's what tattooing, and that's what, some of the stuff's about, making it your own.
Now we talked about you obviously having to pivot and adapt during a pandemic era, but obviously you are a very big guy, very svelte, if you will. What does besides, you mentioned a little bit before some of the things you do fitness wise to stay in shape? You talked about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I obviously follow you on Instagram. We're buds, so to speak. So I know that you get to do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the boys over at Violent Gentlemen, which is a hockey brand. But are there other things that you do both in a pandemic / post-pandemic era and before that, where what you do to kind of stay in shape?
I mean, I don't do enough, but I do right now I've kind of built a little home gym, and I've been kind of
Uh-huh.
piecing it together and just trying to spend an hour in there a day. And then I got the Peloton thing going, so I've been doing the Peloton, which I like that I can kind of sit stationary and burn calories, and I kind of watch a TV show or a movie while I'm doing it. So I kind of feel like I'm killing two birds in one stone, like taking some of that kind of downtime and exercise. But then I go over and I
Hmm.
have a bunch of dumbbells and just kind of like a whole setup that I'm trying to just be way more active with. And it's just a constant battle. Jiu-jitsu has been the best thing, which I kind of let go of for like 6 months during the pandemic. And then had a couple buddies who were like, hey, we know you're being really safe. We're being really safe. Why don't we roll 2 nights a week? So then I kind of picked it back up a few months ago, and that's been really just beneficial as far as just like mad cardio. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just rebuilding, man. I have some injuries. I have a back disc replacement from tattooing for 20 plus years. I have a knee injury from surfing. I have a shoulder injury from trying to lift too much at the gym when I was young. And so I'm just doing a lot of repair now, and but I'm doing a lot. I'm doing a lot. 5 days a week. Not as heavy and strong as I want to be, but just working my way back up, man, and trying to repair. So a lot of dumbbell, a lot of bike, um, not really any surfing right now, and then a little bit of jujitsu. So I mean, I'm doing stuff, and I'm trying my best to
Yeah.
be as active as possible. But now in my 40s, it's a little bit more about eating too, and I'm trying to do better with that because I enjoy eating, so I'm doing my best, man. I'm doing my best.
Well, first of all, who doesn't love eating? Food is just so delicious. But maybe for guys like you and I who are in our 40s, maybe we don't eat as many
Yeah.
brownie cookie dough Oreos as much as we did like maybe in the 20s. I'm just saying, maybe we just put those on the shelf and save those for a special day. But the one thing that I do love that I obviously own a fitness company with WWE superstar
Mm-hmm.
Seth Rollins, and our big it's called Dead Boys Fitness. And the one thing that we try to preach to people is doing something is better than doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
Getting up and off the couch and just doing some burpees or some push-ups or doing something in your living room is better than doing nothing at all. And you have something. I'm wearing the shirt that says positive mental attitude. That's kind of it encapsulates the same thing in the sense that, like, look, you could be down and out, but if you have this positive mental attitude, the PMA, if you will, to think positive about, hey, look, I'm going to make a change for the better. I'm going to go roll. I'm going to go sit on the Peloton and maybe watch Avengers Endgame. I'm going to go and do 100 air squats for time and just do something rather than doing nothing. How did PMA kind of come about for you and this mindset? Obviously, we know the self-made mindset, but the PMA mindset that you definitely preach. How did that kind of come about, and what it would be your advice to people that kind of are stuck in that mental rut? Maybe it's creatively, but most importantly, changing their health and well-being for the better.
I think PMA has just been such an important thing for me. I kind of always been a positive guy, and then I met and became really good friends with a guy named Toby Morse from the H2O band, and he
Yeah.
sang about positive mental attitude. And I was lucky enough to become good friends with him, and just kind of like the moniker itself, positive mental attitude, PMA, just kind of having that on your brain or tattooed on you or on your shirt as a constant reminder. I mean, the after effect of thinking positive is just has so leaps and bounds changed my life, just because you just attract it. You attract the energy you put out. And the more you focus on it, the more you remind yourself of it, the more you get through obstacles with it. I mean, it's a snowball effect. It's a snowball effect. You know what I mean? And yeah, I just think the more you can think of things like that, like I mean, positive energy kind of like is the opposite of negative energy. And we all
Yeah.
know being around a negative person, you don't want to be around them anymore. And being around a positive person, you want to be around them all the time. And it's just the right side of a snowball, And
Yeah.
it's just done everything for me. It's so simple. It's such a simple thing, but it's so powerful. And I think it affects it has affected me in all aspects of my life, from business to friendship to, you know, just my well-being, and that positivity just kind of helped get you through. So it's not that I always have it. It's not that I'm always happy-go-lucky, but I'm always on top of it. You know what I mean? It's like a muscle. You train yourself.
Yeah, and it's great for you to say that too, because first of all, I'm obviously a big Toby fan. And speaking of pop culture, he has tons of pop culture tattoos all over his
Yes,
body
he does.
for a 50-plus-year-old man. But that's for another story. But I have PMA tattooed on my arm, and sometimes I feel like such a poser because I'm like, sometimes I can just be so negative and so angry and so upset because I didn't get this, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. And to hear you say, hey, look, you may not have it all the time, but as long as you remind yourself, hey, positive mental attitude when it comes to certain things definitely will change, certain things and hopefully create a more positive outlook. And that's what I have to remind myself sometimes. So it's fun to hear someone also say that, because we can't get it right all the time.
No.
We can't. I would love to be positive 1,000% of the time.
Wow.
Unfortunately, that's just a very tough ask. So, the more you're kind to yourself, the more you try to pump yourself up, especially if you're feeling kind of, down and out, and you maybe don't want to do 100 burpees per time, or maybe you don't want to sit on a Peloton for 30 minutes, try to think of the positive effects of that versus the negative, and that's what I think is so cool about PMA. And I'm glad that you're such a, spokesperson for it, because again, it's just a fun way to encourage people, and it's just 3 silly letters that can change somebody's whole outlook. It could definitely change somebody's whole day. Now, before we end this, a couple of things. One, is Luke Wessman a big fan of anything pop culture, whether it be music, TV, is there movies? What do you like, Luke, that would be considered pop culture that maybe people don't know?
Let's see. Well, I'll definitely say as a child, I was a big fan of a lot of the standard stuff. I mean, in the 80s, it was, G.I. Joe and, Star Wars and being Luke. I mean, people called me Luke Skywalker my whole life, so I always felt like I had a connection to it. But I never was an overly huge Star Wars fan, but I always loved it. So like all those classic stuff. But as a kid, we didn't have money or toys. I had some random one-armed He-Man characters from the thrift store, So I never had anybody to help push me into like really collecting. So now, I mean, really, it's tattoos and art and friendships. You know what I mean? Those are my collectibles. I mean, I have tattoos from all over the world. I have tattoos from so many different countries, and I mean, that's definitely a form of collecting. I mean, what is collectibles? It's like an item that's valued or sought after by collectors, right? So like tattooing is kind of that, even though it's not the traditional form. But I've been a big tattoo collector for the last 25 years. Pop culture, I love movies, and I love sci-fi and comedy, and I mean, I love a lot of the kind of the big stuff, But I mean, my main stuff is art and tattoos and books, and I haven't had the luxury to nerd out on anything in particular other than that, but I definitely nerded out on tattoos, and tattoo.
That's great.
artists.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that,
Yeah, no, I think that works. But I was going to say, you're like the original NFT, right? That's what they're called, NFTs. Like, I have a one of a Luke. I don't know if you can see, but I have a one of one Luke Wessman right here, baby. Ain't nobody else have that. So see, there's definitely you were the original NFT when it comes to one of one. And what's so cool about it is, yes, you do collect tattoos from all over the world, from all these different tattoo artists. So in a way, yes, it may not be a Darth Vader 6 scale by Hot Toys that you're collecting, but you're definitely collecting some form of art from a particular artist. It just happens to be on your body for the rest of your life.
Yeah, just wear it. But as a kid, I definitely jumped into all the classics, man. Hot Wheels, Micro Machines, anything I could that someone I came across was playing with. I thought it was cool. But yeah, nothing hooked me, man. Nothing hooked me except tattooing. I kind of stuck with it, and like we were saying, I mean, it's a cool form of collectible. It's a little bit more extreme. You get pain. You gotta earn it with some pain, money, and time. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade it. I mean, this whole bodysuit is the most expensive suit you could ever buy, and the hardest. You can never recreate this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for what it's worth, Luke, you have very soft hands, so it didn't hurt as much when you tattooed my ankle. So, that if you guys are ever thinking about getting a Luke Wessman tattoo, he's not going to make you feel too much pain. So
yeah, I won't torture you too much.
Exactly. Well, before I let you go, I always ask this question of every single guest that I have, and this may be a little bit difficult for you, but I think you'll be able to pull it off. I'll give you a minute to think about it. So obviously, like I said a million times throughout this interview, I'm a big pro wrestling fan. I love pro wrestling. And so the question that I ask all my guests is, if you, Luke Wessman, were able to book your very own pop culture WrestleMania main event, what would it be? For example, it could be anything. It could be Hulk versus Luke Skywalker in a lightsaber match. It could be Big E versus Tupac versus DMX in a Brooklyn street fight. It literally could be anything you want. It could be the Cholos from Blood In, Blood Out versus the Cholos from American Me. I don't care what it is. What would your pop culture WrestleMania main event be, and who wins? Yeah, I know. I put you on a spot. Yeah, you got to tell me who wins.
Well, whenever I think of WWF or E, what's the main thing right now? I hope
right now it's E.
Okay.
No. Okay. Right now it's E. It used to be F, so it's okay.
Okay. I always think of my buddy CM Punk, who I got to tattoo in the past. And so I'm like, okay, Punk versus The Rock, just to see how it would go, because I think of The Rock a lot as a popular wrestler. I don't know if he's well liked. I know he's well liked by everybody, but I don't know if he's well liked by the people in the or in the WWE or F anymore. I don't know.
You're thinking too political, Luke. You're thinking too political. All right.
But if we're thinking like big scale, gosh, man, that's such a big question, because it would be so fun to see so many different people clash.
All right, how about this? I'll help you out a little bit. You got CM Punk.
Okay.
CM Punk versus, give me a comic book or a pop culture or a movie villain, actor, character. CM Punk versus...
shit. Okay. I mean, he's going to lose to any of those guys.
Or will he?
I would say Wolverine.
Okay. See, great main event.
I don't know. Maybe Punk could. I mean, I know he's done a lot of jiu-jitsu, so maybe he could outdo him. I don't know.
Look, no offense to CM Punk, but I think Wolverine's going to go over on that one just because of his adamantium claws. But who knows? CM Punk, he could pull it off. I don't. That's definitely a main event that I'm sure people would pay to see. Luke. So I think you did a good job on booking that one.
Yeah, thanks for putting me on the spot, bud.
It's okay. That's all right. Look, we didn't say CM Punk was going to lose. I'm just saying, if he's going to lose, who better to lose to than Wolverine?
Superhuman,
Yeah, exactly. Well, Luke, this has been so much fun, man. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for inspiring so many people with a positive mental attitude. Thank you so much for my very own Luke Wessman tattoo. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of Get Super with Joshy G. Now, of course, we are going to have a workout. Don't worry, Luke. You don't have to do it, but if you want to do it at a later date and let me know how you did, that's totally fine with me.
I need to do it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Luke, and we'll be right back with our very own PMA workout.
Hey, thank you, brother. Great talking to you, man.
What is up, Sideshow Collectibles? It is Get Super with Joshy G, the workout portion. We have the lovely Jen Houston in the house, and today is a very special one, a very special workout. It is Death by Burpees. What is Death by Burpees? Well, it is a very taxing and grueling workout. It seems easy at first. You're like, oh man, this is the easiest workout on the planet, but no, it is not. You're gonna start off with one burpee on the very first minute. It's basically an EMOM, which stands for every minute on the minute. You're gonna complete one burpee on minute 1. Then you're gonna complete 2 burpees on minute 2. You're gonna complete 3 burpees on minute 3, and you're gonna go on until you cannot complete the number of burpees that correlates with the minute. For example, if you get to 15 minutes, that's 15 burpees. If you can't complete 15 burpees in 1 minute, you are done. Hence the name, Death by Burpee. You ready?
You gonna do it with me?
No, I'm the dead boy. You're the dead girl demonstrator. Anyway, here we go. In 3, 2, 1, let's go. All right, so Jen, the lovely Jen's gonna demonstrate a burpee. Oh, it's a good burpee, Jen. Well, you're gonna fall straight to the ground just like that. You're gonna jump up and clap. That is considered a good burpee. Now, let me give you some burpee variations. Since we don't really have much to demonstrate here, you can do the no push-up kind, which is where you throw your feet back, you throw your feet forward, and you jump and clap. That is also considered a good burpee. You could also do the slow old person burpee, which is where you kind of walk your feet back, you fall to the ground, you walk your feet forward, and jump and clap. That is considered a good burpee. 1. 2. 3. 4. So there you have it, Death by Burpees. Jen got all the way to round 74. That's right, 74. No, I'm just kidding. But we are very curious to see how far you got in Death by Burpees. It is tough. It does sound easy, but I'm telling you, when you get to rounds 8 and 9, that's when it starts to get real. All right? Well, we'll see you next week. Until then, high five, Jen.
Good luck.
And don't forget to let your geek side show. Did you enjoy that video? Be sure to subscribe by hitting the S icon on your screen and click the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video is posted. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to let your geek side show.